Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game SO. Today we're going to have another fun and exciting episode for you guys this Friday because we're going to be taking a look at the Midway Zeus Arcade PCB. It's most famous for running Mortal Kombat 4 in arcades, and as that board, it is very common, but it is an expensive board because of the game it runs. But the Zeus ran one other game in arcades, a much rarer one, a 3D light gun arcade game with some horror elements, Invasion the Abductors. And if you know me and you know my love of arcade light gun games, you're damn right this is an Invasion PCB. I did a video on this in July on emulation, saying that I've been looking for a PCB for a long time but hadn't found one yet, and of course basically right after that video went live I was able to locate a Midway Zeus, which was an original kit variant of this game, and that is definitely something that's going to live in my arcade collection for a very long time. The Zeus is a very interesting board because the hardware on it is for the most part bespoke. This is not using any sort of 3D effects chips like other Midway boards of the time may have done. This uses a custom 3D setup with a ton of surface mount ROMs here that are socketed into the board. This doesn't run on a hard drive, even though it does have a hard drive header on the board, which I'll show you guys in just a little bit. But this is a heavy populated board as far as the ROMs are concerned. It's about 30 megabytes of actual game content spread across these chips. It is a JAMMA board. That VGA port on the right side of the screen does absolutely nothing as far as I can tell, and you will see here that it does have a different power connector. It seems like it was designed for maybe also not being a JAMMA board, but everything I've ever seen run on this goes via the JAMMA variant. And again, even though this is Invasion, you've definitely probably played this hardware somewhere, and that is because Mortal Kombat 4 was running on the Zeus. This is the first 3D Mortal Kombat, and while it's not my favorite franchise in the world, there is a lot of fun to be had with Mortal Kombat 4, and it is one of those games that everyone pretty much remembers. So as far as the Zeus hardware is concerned, the PCB in and of itself isn't exactly that rare, but 99 out of 100 PCBs you're going to see for this board are going to be Mortal Kombat 4, and that's probably what most people want to collect. Now I could convert this over to a Mortal Kombat 4 board. I just change out the ROMs to the security chip and it would function just like original hardware, but honestly, considering I love light gun arcade games way more than I love Mortal Kombat 4, this will always remain an Invasion the Abductors PCB. I'm sure a lot of people would change it, but you tell me down below what you would do. And you will see here that it also has harnesses for player 3 input and output and player 4 input and output. Some of those could be used for kicks on something like Mortal Kombat, but clearly this board was designed to run more than 2 games. There's so many unpopulated areas, so many bits of hardware that really don't function whatsoever. It's very curious, and I wonder what Midway was going to do with this hardware had they kept it in arcades floors a little bit more, but at this era and time, things move so quickly. You're going to see right here Texas Instruments digital signal processor, which is functioning as the CPU, but a digital signal processor does things a little bit different. Just think of it as the CPU, and you'll see an FPGA chip as well as that LSI Zeus chip. This is what's basically going to be driving all of the 3D graphics for the system. That custom bespoke digital signal processor marked as the Zeus in the FPGA. So what you're seeing here is not anything that would have been available from 3DFX or any other 3D vendor on the market. This is custom hardware designed for the Zeus, and I love custom 3D hardware for arcades when developers were still actually making their own chipset so that they could get graphics on screen. It just kind of means that everything looks slightly familiar, slightly different. I would say for the most part this feels like it's a 3DFX game as far as the graphical stylings are concerned, but it is running on custom 3D hardware. That's always fun to see something like that in arcades. You'll see here the image does jump every once in a while. That's just because of the sync rate of this board and my capture device. Midway boards like to sync at such ridiculous rates that every once in a while, if you're not playing on a CRT television, you might get a little bit of corruption on screen. It just is how it works. And there's a little bit closer of a look of that DSP that is functioning as the CPU. It's just basically more of a specific chip doing a specific thing versus a general purpose CPU. And again, that LSI Zeus is going to be what's driving most of your visuals. It is a pretty small, pretty compact board. Now on the left hand side of the PCB, you're going to have the sound section, a couple of Midway customs, and then the Analog Devices digital signal processor on the sound side, as well as a couple crystal oscillators and a dip package that is Kapton taped over, so apparently we're not supposed to touch any of them. But here's a sound sample of what the Zeus hardware sounds like, and listen closely because the game involves aliens and definitely shares some sound effects with Duke Nukem 3D.
Score analysis. mission. Los Angeles. Your selection is confirmed. Mission Los Angeles, the freeway. Difficulty level, hard. Your objectives, destroy alien command ship. Secure the letters.
I gave you a non-gameplay section there so you would just have to hear the gunshot sound effects, but around the back of the PCB you're going to see so many unpopulated areas. This is where there is a header for an IDE hard drive, so it seems like the developers and engineers were planning on allowing this to boot from a hard drive, but because we only have 2 games that never got that far, and you're going to see that there is a secondary PCB hanging off of the back of this in the most janky setup ever. This thing can 100% just get torqued off completely if you are not careful, but if you pop that off we can take a look at the underside and explain exactly what it is doing here, because it is a very specific piece of the Invasion kit. This is where you plug the light guns into. You're going to see it is fused. You have one more custom chip on this board for Invasion the Abductors, as well as the header to plug it into the Zeus motherboard. This is specific to Invasion the Abductors, and you need to have this board here if you want to run light gun games on it, and that is just one of those things. It is essential, and it's very hard to find if it's not with the board. Now, as far as the controls on this game, for the most part this was a kit. Dedicated cabinets seem to be either quite rare or non-existent, but it did still ship with HAP 45s, which is an aftermarket kind of gun. HAP made a lot of controls for a lot of arcade vendors. It just means that Midway didn't do their own custom molds for a game like this as far as I can tell. But this is an awesome light gun game, and one of my favorite aspects of it is that for some reason it doesn't actually flash the screen when you are shooting your firearm. It doesn't seem to be having to do that the same way that something like Evil Knight or The House of the Dead or Virtual Cop does, so I'm not really sure how they were able to trick that, if it's some sort of video mode where they're able to hide most of the flashes, but it seems like you can play this game without the wild flashing all over the screen. It happens a few times, but that's when something gets hit on a target. And in one of the best quality of life features ever to be put on an arcade board, you're going to have these 4 LEDs right here, which isn't that unusual for an arcade board. The nice thing is, if these have any faults, that diagnostic LED will flash basically what amounts to Morse code, and the codes are very easy to find, so you can diagnose the board compared to stuff like Konami that gives you a random error number. Good luck finding information on that. Obviously the Zeus is fun hardware, and for the most part people 100% remember it for playing Mortal Kombat 4, and this was some of Midway's earlier 3D stuff in arcades. Mortal Kombat 4 was a ton of fun, but again, it's just not the type of game that I absolutely gravitate towards. If I'm going to play a 3D fighting game, it's probably going to be more something like Dead or Alive or Virtual Cop. But as far as light gun arcade games are concerned, especially in the horror genre, you know full well that I absolutely love them, and having such a fun, cheesy, B-movie horror style alien invasion light gun game on a board that uses its own custom 3D hardware from the late 90s, that is like catnip for me, and that is why I love this game as well as this hardware. And I will upload a long play in 4K of the whole game, as well as rerun a review after I did it in MAME, so we can talk about all the areas that just kept freezing on me in emulation. But that is the Midway Zeus arcade board. Wish it ran a couple more games, but for the 2 games it runs, everyone loves Mortal Kombat 4, and pretty much anyone who is out there probably doesn't know about Invasion the Abductors. But leave me a comment down below and tell me, did you know Invasion was a game, and if so, have you ever played it, and would you play it if you could find a board for it? But this Midway Zeus arcade board is going to have a permanent home in my collection because it has everything I love, some janky 3D as well as some light gun gaming. Short of that, we're done, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.